Yeah, TimCidy Pod, trying to sit it down. Real talk, no fun, no crime. God loves you, let the truth resound. TimCidy Pod.
Yo, it's your boy Tim City, and today I'm gonna be with Audrey King. Audrey King, take us back before you knew God. Who were you, and what was your life like? Okay, before you knew God, who was Audrey? Um, is there a difference? I'm curious. This question.
Well, my name's Audrey. I'm from Tennessee, and I think that a bit of context is important for um, kind of understanding who I was before Christ. Unlike a lot of people um, that have come to know the Lord in like these really like this big moment where all of a sudden they like had this encounter with the Lord and everything changed. I have encountered the Lord many, many times and had my life changed, but it has always been in small, faithful ways and not in like this one big moment in my life. I grew up in the Bible Belt of America, and so I was surrounded by Christian culture. My parents were believers. And my siblings and I grew up always in church. My parents are really involved, and so we were very involved. And so God was like always a part of my life. He wasn't always the center of my life, but he was always there. So there wasn't like a point in my life where I didn't know who God was or where I didn't think that God was real. And it wasn't until probably my last couple of years in high school that I actually had a personal relationship with him. And so before that, I had went through some personal things and some things with my family and some things with a church that we were a part of that kind of skewed my view of Christianity and God and what it meant to follow God. And so when I was younger, then I had really just a skewed view. And for a while, I didn't really want anything to do with God or the church. It just wasn't. I just thought it wasn't for me. I was just done. I'd had bad experiences and didn't really want any part of it for a little while. And like through that, I also became just kind of an angry person. Was kind of resentful and struggled with some mental health things like anxiety and depression. And so, yeah, before Christ, life was not great, but also like God was always there. I just didn't always recognize him. And looking back, like my story is a story of God's faithfulness and persistence. Because even when I didn't want anything to do with him, he was still loving me and pursuing me. And it just took me time to get to a place where I could recognize that and accept him. But after I did, my life changed drastically.
Oh man, it sounds like you went through so much before you knew Christ, the mental and the church and the teachings and the treatment. But look, I'm happy you never gave up on Christ. Let's go. What were some of the things you were chasing after or trying to find fulfillment in? What were you trying to find fulfillment in?
Like I said, I struggled a lot with anger and unforgiveness before I really had a relationship with the Lord. And I don't perfectly walk this out every day, by any means. But I used to, for sure, like, an eye for an eye, right? Like, you treat me wrong, I get to treat you wrong now. You do something bad to me, I don't have to forgive you. I'm going to be angry at you. And that's a terrible way to live. And when the Lord really, like, rocked my world and showed me a lot about forgiveness, it changed so many things in my life. And so I'm so, so grateful that I don't hold on to anger the way that I used to. And I think also part of that too is, like, I felt like a lot of the ideas that I had about God were that he wasn't very forgiving. He said he was, but that he probably wasn't really, and that he was, like, always waiting for you to do something wrong, and was never happy with you or satisfied with you, and that you just always had to, like, prove yourself. And so I think kind of having that view of God is kind of also how I viewed myself and other people. Thankfully, that is not what God is like at all. God is very forgiving and very loving and very merciful. But that was kind of my view and my idea of God. And so I'm so thankful that that changed.
Oh my God. My friend, you dealt with anger, anxiety, and you didn't claim to be perfect, and you believed in this, what, an eye for an eye, and you struggled to forgive. I am happy that God helped you forgive and that you don't hold on to anger anymore. Here's a question. Was there a particular moment or experience that made you realize you needed to change?
Well, like I said, there wasn't ever this, like, big specific moment where I, like, met the Lord or he spoke to me and everything changed. It was a lot of small moments that, piled up over time. I do think, like I mentioned, I struggled a lot with my mental health when I was a teenager. And because I had grown up in the church and just with God, like, a big part of our lives, then I knew that the way that I was living and the things that I wanted and the path that I was going down was not good and was not the path that the Lord wanted for me. And I knew, like, deep down that he was the better option, but I was rebellious and I didn't want that, and I was hurt. And so I just really kind of rejected him for a long time, and was scared to take the dive into letting him have my heart and my life. And so, but I just remember lots of moments where, like, even when I didn't want him, even when I was angry with him, being really low and just, like, crying out to him. And he would always meet me, and then I would go right back to the way I was before. But he was always faithful, and I always, like, deep down knew that he was the answer to everything that I was searching for and everything that I needed. But it just took me a while to accept it. But when I was in high school, I joined a youth group, and God put some really incredible leaders and friends there for me that really poured into me, and just showed me what it actually was like to love God and to love people and to live for him in a very real and honest way. And so from then on, I feel like the Lord really started to move in my life, and I was receptive to it. I didn't push back as much, and that's when I really started to see change in me and in my life. And when I really realized, like, Jesus is it. Like, there's nothing else. There's no one else that is going to satisfy me or fulfill me, and he's worth it, you know. So really, I think a turning point for me was joining that youth group and getting involved.
I'm happy you chose to trust God. I'm happy uh he never stopped seeking you. I mean, the Bible tells us that he would leave the 99 to go and get that one lost sheep. You know, even though you might one would say you somewhat drifted, happy you knew that he was the one you needed deep down. I'm happy you learned to love him. I'm happy you had a good community that helped you grow closer to him. And I'm happy you realized that, look, what I need is just to get involved. What were your thoughts on God or spirituality before you became a Christian?
Growing up in the Bible Belt, I was surrounded by churches and Christians and people who believed in God. So I never really went through like a time in my life where I didn't believe that God existed. I went through a time in my life where I didn't want God. But I always, just from the time I was born, knew that he was real, knew that he was there. But some negative experiences when I was younger with people in the church, people who were Christians but are people and make mistakes, really kind of turned me off to God and Christianity for a while. A lot of like the hypocritical things that I had seen in these other people, I attributed to God and to anyone who said that they were a Christian or followed the Lord. And so while I never doubted God's existence, really, I did live my life for a little while knowing that he was real and that he was there and that I should follow him, but not wanting him and choosing to just kind of live my life for me. And I knew that that was wrong. I knew that it wasn't good and that it probably wasn't going to end well. But I was stubborn and I was hurt and just kind of didn't want anything to do with Christianity, God, spirituality. The world felt more free and more fun, and that's what I wanted. But deep down, like, I always knew that God was there, and I knew that that was wrong, and I knew that I needed to go back to him. I just didn't want to for a while.
From going to church, or just to stop you from seeking God? Well, it stopped me. Uh, when I was in grade 12, I fought for a girl with a fellow friend, you know. I didn't know the girl was his. I couldn't believe that this guy would fight me for a girl. But listen, I'm glad that you found joy and you found freedom, that this didn't stop you. And I'm not justifying what happened between me and the guy. I have apologized though. What was the turning point for you? What led you to surrender to God?
Yeah, a turning point for me, and what kind of led to me surrendering to God. I think the youth group that I joined in high school was really a big part of my story. And I was pursuing God and growing in my relationship with him slowly but surely. But there was still a disconnect, and there was still some walls that I had up that were keeping me from fully knowing him, fully surrendering to him. And really, when it got down to the root of it, a lot of it was unforgiveness that I had towards other people. And so I remember I was probably 16 and I was at church, and the pastor taught on forgiveness. And I just remember the whole time I just felt the Lord telling me that it was time and that I needed to forgive some people in my life. And so I went home and started that journey of forgiving, and what does that look like, and how do I actually do it and not just say I forgive you and still hold anger and resentment. And so when I began to walk through that and be obedient in forgiving people who had hurt me and done me wrong, walls started to come down that I didn't even realize were still up. And that is when I feel like I really started to understand the Lord more and deepen my relationship with him. And it really did, like, it took forgiving others. It wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't like this huge moment where everything all of a sudden changed, but it was a moment where I heard the Lord, and thank God he gave me the grace to be obedient. And through that, he really began to work in my life. And things changed big time after that. But again, it was a process. Like, it wasn't, everything was fixed overnight. But I remember just feeling a weight come off of me, and I felt so much lighter. And yeah, it was crazy. And it's only God that can do that, you know? And so when I had that experience and I saw like how my obedience to what he asked me to do, so quickly lifted a weight off of my shoulders, it was like, wow, like God is so big and so powerful and so good. Like, what am I doing? Like, he's it, you know? And I think that is when I really started to dig into my relationship with the Lord.
Well, what I'm learning is that everyone has a different relationship with God. Whereas some people say their change was fast, some say the change or the growth is baby steps. Our God is faithful, he is kind, and I'm glad that you're working on yourself and you took the time to just make these steps and to just to forgive those who hurt you. It is a bold step that you took, and I'm glad that it made you feel lighter. And I'm happy you said yes to God. He heals, he is here, he is so powerful.
My life changed a lot after I met God. Not all of it was immediate. There's a lot of things that took a lot of time. But it's changed totally. I think it's easy to have been living a life with the Lord for a while and to kind of forget where you came from and the things that God brought you out of. At least it is for me sometimes. But I think one of the biggest differences, like one of the biggest kind of immediate differences, was just my inner peace and joy. Before God, I don't think I was ever at peace. I was always restless. I was anxious. I struggled with a lot of stuff, and that all kind of kept me from joy and peace and fulfillment. I was just never fulfilled. Nothing was ever enough. I was always searching, always seeking, and those things, especially kind of the mental, emotional side of things, really the Lord just totally took away. Not to say that everything's perfect all the time in my life now, but it's completely different. I have so much peace and so much more joy. um, since I have been walking with the Lord and gave my life to Christ. And then I think through that, like, God changed my heart, and my relationships with people are better. I love people better, and I love, um, yeah, my relationships got stronger and better. And because I think that when you are not satisfied and you are not fulfilled and you don't have peace or joy, then you're not a fun person to be around. I mean, nobody wants to be around that person. And I took a lot of the things that I was struggling with out on the people around me. And so my relationships definitely have changed and been better. And just my life is better, you know? Everything about my life is better. Nothing about my life is perfect. But God is a part of it all, and so it's good. But definitely kind of just my mental health and my relationships and all of that changed really drastically after I gave my life to the Lord.
Living with God is easy. Living without Him, it's so hard. Amen. Before God, we all didn't have peace, to be honest. Most of us was just trying to find ourselves. I'm glad that He helped your relationships with people. I really am glad He did that for you. Here's a question: what's the one thing you used to do, or think you are glad that you've left behind? Yes, the one thing you used to do but don't do anymore. What is it, friend? Let's go.
Like I said, I struggled a lot with anger and unforgiveness before I really had a relationship with the Lord. Um, and I don't perfectly walk this out every day by any means, but um, I used to, for sure, like, an eye for an eye, right? Like, you treat me wrong, I get to treat you wrong now. You do something bad to me, I don't have to forgive you. I'm going to be angry at you. And that's a terrible way to live. And when the Lord really, like, rocked my world and showed me a lot about forgiveness, it changed so many things in my life. And so I'm so, so grateful that I don't hold on to anger the way that I used to. And I think also part of that too is, like, I felt like a lot of the ideas that I had about God were that He wasn't very forgiving. He said He was, but that He probably wasn't really, and that He was, like, always waiting for you to do something wrong, and was never happy with you or satisfied with you, and that you just always had to, like, prove yourself. And so I think kind of having that view of God is kind of also how I viewed myself and other people. Thankfully, that is not what God is like at all. God is very forgiving and very loving and very merciful. But that was kind of my view and my idea of God. And so I'm so thankful that that changed.
Okay, friend. Listen, man. Thank you for just being vulnerable and sharing all these things, sharing with me, because it's really personal and it is your past. Thank you for being vulnerable. Okay, let's go. How has God transformed your relationships, values, or priorities? How has God transformed any of these? You know, um, just one more time, thank you for doing this. Thank you for agreeing. And with anger and the past unforgiveness, nobody's perfect. You know, Jesus says, "Take your cross and follow me." He is perfect. We're not. He helps us be better. Let's go, friend.
Oh my gosh. Um, my priorities and values are totally different now than before my relationship with Christ. I mean, the reality is, like, the God of the universe, like, he's perfect, he's holy, he's everything. Like, he decided to create me and then to die for me so that I could have a relationship with him. And so I think when we understand that and we grasp that, as much as we can understand it because it's crazy, then everything about our lives has to change. Our priorities have to change. Our values have to change. Relationships with people have to change, because he died for me just as much as he died for every single other person on earth. Good, bad, it doesn't matter. Like, he died for them just like he died for me. And when we can look at people like that and see what God sees, then the way that we treat them and the way that we interact with them and the way that we view them is so much different than when we just look at them through our own human lens. Priorities and values. He changed everything. With that, I think, I went back to school because of the things that he put on my heart. And I'm majoring in social work. That's my major, because of the passions and the vision that he's given me. And like, that did not come from me, because like, the reality is, if I just got to pick something I wanted to do, then it would not be what I'm doing. It would be something else. But God has given me a glimpse of his heart for people and for the world, and so I'm trusting that what he's telling me to do is what I need to be doing, and I find fulfillment in that, like, it is not at all something I would have picked, but it is good because it's from God, and that just, like, it changes everything when we allow God to give us his desires and show us his heart. Everything has to change. So my whole life now, like, I make loose plans, but I fully expect the Lord to just do whatever he wants with them and change most of them, because that's typically what happens. Because we have very different ideas and views about what my life should look like and what it should be. But every time that I have chosen to surrender that to him and to let him lead, then it has been so much better than what I would have done. But he definitely has changed my priorities and my view, just of life and of people. And it's better. It's so much better than what I could do on my own.
John chapter 3 verse 16. Amen. For God so loved the world. You are preaching right now. We need to just share Jesus. He died for all of us. Happy you went back to school. I'm not surprised you're doing social work. I'm not surprised. Yeah, we make plans and God just comes through and make his own plans, And sometimes it's hard to go through this, but we just need to follow him, We need to just look at him and be like, yo, God, drive this car. Looking back, what's that one thing you wish you had known about God? One thing you wish you had known about God earlier, before you went through life and did those things? Share.
Something I wish I would have known about myself or about God, I think, is just that no matter how good or how enticing something that I wanted or was chasing after, like, no matter how good that looked, it was never going to fulfill me. It was never going to be enough. I was never going to find contentment in anything but God. Even when my life doesn't look the way I want it to, or when things are hard or confusing. Like, if I am letting the Lord lead, then, and if I am letting him be my everything, then I will be fulfilled and I will be content. But when my view gets off and when my priorities are off and God is not my priority, then I'm unfulfilled. And so I wish that was something that I knew. Like, making God my everything is the best and most important thing I could ever do. Like, that's the whole point. The whole point of life is to know him and to love him and to be known and loved by him. And everything else is extra, everything else is just a bonus. And so, yeah. And I also, I grew up kind of with a view of God, like, he's angry and he's judgmental and he's not fun and he says that he's loving, but he's not that loving, and he really probably doesn't want anything to do with me, and I'm probably a disappointment, and the only way that I'm ever gonna be okay is if I just do everything right. And that's impossible. We're never gonna do everything right. That's never gonna happen. And so I felt like I needed to be perfect for God to accept me, but I was never going to be able to obtain perfection. And that is just not the truth. God is not looking for me to be perfect. He's not looking for me to do everything right and to be sinless and to, just get it all right. That's impossible. And he's more concerned with my heart, and am I chasing after him, and do I love him, and do I love people? And that's what he's most concerned with. And everything else after that, he will help, we'll work through it, but that's his main priority, because he loves me and he wants a relationship with me. And it's not about me doing everything. I don't have to spend 2 hours in prayer every day and 3 hours in the Word. And I don't have to work in ministry, and I don't have to do all these crazy things for him. He doesn't want me to do a bunch of stuff for him. He just wants me to be with him and to know him. And that takes the pressure off of me. And that's such a gift, And God is fun. He's not this stuck up whatever person. He's fun, and life with him is fun. And so much better than anything that I could ever dream of or imagine or hope for. Different than what I would dream of or imagine, but better and worth it. And he's worth it. So yeah. He changes everything, and it's not an easy process. It's hard at times, but it's worth it, 100%. Tim, it's been so fun to talk with you and to do this. Thank you for having me on, and I'm so excited to see where this podcast goes and to continue to see what the Lord does with you and through it. So thank you.
Thank you for doing this. Thank you.